Good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Women in Ministry broadcast on Facebook TV. Today we have a special guest, but before we get to that, we will do our usual. We'll have our prayer and our devotion, and we'll begin the interview. And I will do the introduction first after the prayer and the devotion. So today, Father God, we are so blessed. We are blessed and thankful to have a guest, the first guest on this program in terms of reuniting families and restoring family values. Father God, when you hear her story, we will learn how blessed we are and how much you love us. And we thank you for your love and your care. In Jesus' name, amen. So for a devotional, I I try to read something that is encouraging and inspiring so that whatever is said or done, you will leave with something positive to take home with you for today. And today's uh, positive encouragement is in a way of a prayer. And I guess I um, I had a prayer earlier, so I'm in a prayer mood. So and it's healing wings. It say you may like the knowledge that the great salvation you receive in Christ brought with it healing in his wings. This means that God include his divine healing in his package of salvation for mankind. And as a scripture reference is Malachi 4:2, and it reads, "But unto you that fear my name shall the Son of Righteousness arise with healing in his wings, and ye shall go forth and grow up as calves of the stall." So we want to thank you all for joining us this evening or this afternoon or tonight, whatever time you zone you're in. And we want to thank my niece, and I'll introduce her as my niece, Margaret Williams Walker. She is an author. She is a mother. She's a wife. She is an employee. She is an attorney. She works. She is a minister. So she's a lot of things, but more, and she's a sister. She's a sister. So I have a slide that I will show you a little bit later on. But before we get on, I would like to take this time to welcome to Women in Ministry TV, none other than the amazing Margaret William Walker. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. And Aunt Mary, is it all right if I call you Aunt Mary?
Yes, it's okay if you call me Aunt Mary.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to spend this time with you and with the audience. And I'm looking forward to whatever God has in store for us this evening.
Well, thank you. That's one of the things I prayed earlier today, the will of God. So whatever God's will is, we hope that it happens today
Yes.
and
Yes.
always.
Amen.
So, yes. So, Margaret,
Yes. Yes.
I'm going to let you have the floor and tell us what you would like for us to know about you. You know, I have some inside knowledge, but I would like to hear it from your perspective.
Sure. Sure. I'm happy to introduce myself. So, as Aunt Mary mentioned, I wear a lot of hats, and I'm very grateful to be able to do so. I guess my godly proudest. I get concerned about having too much pride. But my greatest joy, let's put it that way, my greatest joy are my three daughters, my husband, who pastors a church in New Britain, Connecticut, St. James Missionary Baptist Church. He and I are the grateful parents of three beautiful daughters, 20, soon to be 22, 20, and soon to be, no, already 17. She turned 17 in July. And so we are busy with that. Again, he pastors a church, and I am the assistant to the pastor. And so that brings us great joy. and is a wonderful way to just love on God's people, which is just a wonderful, wonderful blessing. I also am the executive vice president of legal affairs and communications at a company called HMTX Industries, headquartered in Norwalk, Connecticut. What else do I want you to know? And I'm also a very recent author of Ninzi's Secret, which I think we're going to talk about this this afternoon into this evening. But more than that, I'm just a child of God, and I'm grateful for all of the benefits and blessings that He's bestowed upon me and my family. Much of it, much of which we will get into as we begin our conversation.
Well, thank you.
My
And
pleasure.
thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Right. So let's get a little bit into Ninja's Secret because that is one of the things that attracted. Well, that's not the thing that attracted me to you because that happens after we had met, but it had occurred. The writing of Ninja's Secret occurred after the Lord had given me a mandate of
Uh-huh.
reuniting families and restoring family value. Even though I had been working in this, I didn't know that was my assignment. And
Mhm.
he made sure that I knew that that's my assignment. So now that I've accepted that assignment, I am open and trying to accomplish what he's telling me to do.
That's
And your being here today is symbolic of
mhm.
reuniting families, and so is Ninja's Secret. But
Mhm.
the way that happened, that is an amazing story because we knew that the hand of God had to be in the creation of Ninja's Secret. So I'm
Yes.
going to let you talk a little bit about that.
Yes, yes. One thing I'll say before we get into the book and into the whole story is to your point, you know, God had plans and unbeknownst to you,
That's right.
but he was putting things together and he was making connections and he was opening doors and windows before the full revelation came. So that once that full revelation came, you were ready for the ministry and the assignment that he had for you. So that's just the way our God works, and I'm so grateful for that. So I'll tell you, Ninzi's Secret is a ministry that I've had since the beginning. I was adopted. I was abandoned as an infant and put up for adoption, and became a foster child. What, at 3 days old, 4 days old, and went to be with a family, a foster home, in Rochester, New York. So I was born in Rochester, New York, and entered into the foster care system as an infant in Rochester. And I was blessed because, as you know, Aunt Mary, not every child can have a successful foster experience. And I would like to think that I had a very successful one. My foster parents ended up adopting me and my brother, not my biological brother, but another foster child, when I was 5. And so, therefore, was able to have a permanent home. And again, that's not the story with many children who are in foster care. So very grateful on that part. Then my parents were wonderful. My mother was just an angel, I believe, put on assignment. She was 50 years old when I came to her as an infant. And she had the love in her heart to just welcome another child into her home. She had raised 4 children of her own, and then she'd been a foster mother for years before I came. And she was just an angel that I think was dispatched by God for this assignment. And so, she loved me, she nourished me, she taught me. She herself she had come up from the South, from North Carolina, born in 1917, and she didn't have a lot of formal education, but probably the wisest woman I ever knew. And she introduced me to Jesus Christ, not only in how she took me to church with her when we were little, but just in how she lived her life. And I am blessed, 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 blessed beyond measure because of what she poured into me. And she never hid from me the story that I was adopted. She never She told me, she tried to tell me as best she could the little bit that the state would let her know. And so she would tell me that my birth father was a doctor. She would tell me my birth mother was a nurse. And she would say, well, that's why you're so smart. And I used to think, she's just saying that. She's just trying to make me feel better. But the book explains how I go about searching and finding my birth mother, which is how, Aunt Mary, you and I came to be, and came to know each other. So that's what the story of Ninzi's Secret is. It's a tribute to my adoptive mom, who is the woman who raised me from, zero until she passed away when I was 30. And it also talks about my search for my birth parents. And all of that is chronicled in the book. And I think what you see in the book, or what I hope people will see in the book, is how God's hand was in it all. From before I was born, God had a plan. And what this book does is chronicle that plan that God had as it's been made manifest to me.
And that is the one of the amazing part about this, is because I got to know your birth mother.
Mm-hmm.
We were close. I got to know her for several years. Not only that, when we were separated, we would write to each other. And I think I was able to share a
Yes.
letter or two that I had saved over the years. But we're talking about a gap here. I met your mother over 50 years ago. And
Uh-huh.
this is just happened within the last 5 to 6 years. So that's what, when I say God had a hand in this,
Yes.
because there was a mutual friend
Uh-huh.
that introduced you to me via telephone. And
Yes.
I was anxious to see you. So I drove to Connecticut. And fortunately, Nancy was still alive.
Yes.
And so after getting there and meeting you, I could see why she has some memory issues
Mm-hmm.
in terms of confusing the two of us. So
Mm-hmm.
it was
Mm-hmm.
quite an exciting but very interesting occasion. Would you tell a little bit about that?
Sure, sure. So I'm jumping ahead quite a bit. So at Search for My Birth Mother, her name is Ninzi. That's the title, Ninzi's Secret. And I had searched, and I found her in 1997, and I was not quite 30. And in that same year, my mom, my adopted mom, was transitioning. And so in my mind, there was this handoff. So, like, the first handoff was when Ninzi put me up for adoption, and I was adopted by my mother, whose name was Jessie Bell Williams. And when she transitioned, is exactly the point in time that I found Ninzi. And jumping ahead, because all of that's in the book, but at some point found Ninzi, reunited with her. And at some point in that, Ninzi became very ill and lost her short-term memory. So whenever my husband and I would visit Ninzi, she never recognized me as Margaret. She always called me Mary. And I didn't know why. She would always, like, without fail, Mary. And she would ask about my parents. Oh, how are your parents? And how is Robert? And I'm thinking to myself, who is Mary? Why is Lindsay always so concerned about Mary's parents? And who in the world is Robert? And this went on for years. And so much so that the kids used to tease me. They would call me Mary. And so, after a while, I stopped saying I'm not Mary. I just accepted it. She would say, "Hey, hi Mary, how are you?" And I would just answer. And so, but always in the back of my mind, who is Mary? Who is Mary? And so finally, we got contacted by our mutual friend, Sibiletso. Sibiletso, gosh, I somehow we got contacted. I reached out to her, and she was going to be traveling in the States. She resided in South Africa. She's traveling in the States. She wanted to see Ninzi. So We arranged for her to come to Connecticut to meet to see Nancy, to reunite with Nancy. They had been friends from years ago, just like Aunt Mary and Nancy had been. So when finally Sibiletso came to Connecticut to visit Nancy, the mystery of Mary was finally revealed. So I asked her, "Who is Mary? Why does she call me Mary?" And she says, Mary Beal was such a dear friend of Ninzi. And she told me that Mary had a brother named Robert, or a nephew,
Yes,
family member
nephew.
named Robert.
Right.
And that Nancy was very close to you and to your parents. So finally, and so that's how we got in contact. Sibiletso told me about you, gave me your contact information. I reached out to you. And as you said, you came to Connecticut because you had been looking for Nancy and you had been worried about her. And you finally came to Connecticut. And then when you came and I saw you, okay, now finally I get it because we bear a resemblance. And I can now understand why Ninzi had always confused me with you. Finally, the mystery was solved.
Yes, it really was resolved. And when she was in a assisted living,
Yes.
and she didn't talk a lot, but her face lit up so when I
Oh,
entered the
yes.
room, and that was amazing. That
It was beautiful. It was beautiful. Because again, it was her short term memory that was affected. So, it was one of those things where I searched all my life to find her and I found her, and we had a few years of kind of getting to know each other. It wasn't always easy. It was a little bit of a struggle, and for reasons that we've talked about, Aunt Mary. But
Mhm.
finally we found her, only to have her lose her short-term memory and not be able to recognize who I was or who I was in her life. Um, but then to sort of even still see her reunite with friends who dated, further back than my coming into contact with her, and to see her light up like that, and to hear you all reminisce and talk about people that you knew, back in those days was just beautiful.
Yes, it really was, and it showed me that God, he just an awesome God, because
It
I had
is.
been looking for Ninzi. And I was really elated to find out that she was still alive and in the States, because I think she had gone to Europe at one
Yes.
point, and I
Yes.
left.
Awesome.
I left and went to Europe and stayed, and then we lost contact. And so it was just amazing that God put us back together, because
Yeah.
it was just nothing but God in the whole
Nothing but
process.
and that's what the book is. So many moments where you have to say, this is nobody but God.
Exactly. And then when I sat and talked with you, and then I was able to fill in some gaps with some
Yes.
things,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
and that you didn't have an opportunity to experience. I
Right.
think that relieves some of the, I guess I want to say stress, but some of the uneasiness that you had of not knowing
Yeah.
her history.
Yeah.
So that was also God.
Yeah. Because when I met her before she lost her memory, she was just filled with shame and with guilt, and about I have a sister who Ninzi didn't raise either. A little complicated, and that's my sister's name is Thule, and that's really her story to tell. But Ninzi basically did not raise either of us, and she was guilt ridden in many ways. And because of that guilt and because of that shame, she would not fully engage with me. It was very standoffish. She was always polite, always cordial. Um, just a lovely woman in and of herself. But there were questions that I couldn't ask her. I couldn't really ask her why, and I couldn't really dredge up all of that hurt and pain from decades ago, to be honest. And so, in meeting you and you having, known Lindsay during that time and having spoken with her and her having shared with you, I could ask you a lot of those questions that I couldn't ask her. And you filled in so much of not necessarily the facts. Like you helped me sort of track sort of Ninzi's, where she lived and when and all of that. But just the kind of person that Ninzi was and the fact that she struggled so much, she because of the life and just the hand that was dealt, she abused alcohol and drugs and things of that nature. And by the time I had met her, all of those things had taken their toll. So I just couldn't communicate as directly because there were just guards up. But in meeting you and being able to tell me, yes, I knew your mother back when. And yes, she did ask about you all. And yes, she was she was very hurt that she couldn't raise her two girls. Those were the things that I needed to hear um, to help me sort of fill in the context.
Well, now she was still somewhat reserved with the rest of us
Was
because of
she?
the bondage. Yes, she was dealing with some bondage, and by
Hmm.
making her a part of our family, I think it helped ease some of her pain. But she
Yes.
still had her secrets that
Yes.
she was not going to let go of. Okay,
Yeah. Hmm.
but she would socialize.
Hmm.
So my family got to know her and interact with her, and so that's why she would always ask, because we would bring her to what we call the village in South Africa. We would bring her home to my mother's home, and my mother made everybody feel at home, and everybody was her child, and she just loved on her like she did the rest of us.
Isn't that amazing? Because that I can see would be just what Ninzi needed. Because she never got that really.
Mhm.
She never got that really. And so that God would provide your family, and this is where we get back to families and
Exactly.
reuniting families, but that God would provide your family to be a substitute in that way was must have been very healing for her.
Yes, because she was welcome. She didn't feel, like sometimes when you're in a foreign country,
Hmm.
you don't feel welcome, but she felt welcome and at
Yeah.
ease from what I saw and what she said,
Hmm.
and if
Yes.
you read some of her letters, you know that.
Yes, I did. I
Yes.
did. I did. I did. I was blessed with that. She had written a lot, I think a lot during her therapy, sort of therapy for alcoholism or whatever. And I guess one of the things they do is encourage you to write. And so she was able to write a lot about her growing up and a lot about the things that she experienced. So I'm grateful to even have that to this day, those letters.
Okay. One of the other questions that I had is that sometimes you don't talk about it. We were young. We
Hmm.
when you're in your early 20s, mid 20s, you're
Hmm.
not talking about religions as much,
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
we didn't talk about religion, but I sense there was some moral values in her family, and that was part of the reason she had some of the shame and some of the bondage that
Yeah.
affected her life. Can you
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about that after your visit?
I think so. So kind of long story short, met Ninzi, and we'll get into this a little bit more, but my husband and I, we were blessed to be able to sort of minister to her. And then one of the things that she shared with me early on in letter writing is she encouraged me. So this is now probably the year that I met her. I was 30. She says, you need to go visit your family. She says, you have a huge family. And she's like, you're young, you don't have any children. You need to go and visit and get to know them. And, 30 years old in the middle of my career, just never made the time to do it. And then, of course, not long after she got sick and just life happened. And while I had always hoped to go and visit South Africa, I never really got a chance to do that while Ninzi was alive. And then when she passed away, it started gnawing at me more and more. This go to visit your family, get to know your family. And there was some family here in the States that I did get to meet, fortunately, and I got to have a relationship with my sister. But I I wanted to go to South Africa. I wanted to go to where it all began. I wanted to go to this homestead that Ninzi would often write about and how she was so happy there. And one of the few places where she just felt pure joy there. And so we were blessed. My husband, my youngest daughter, Grace, and I were able to travel to South Africa in 2023 and meet my South African family. And that again is spoken about in the book. But to your question, Aunt Mary, yes, she was raised with values and morals. I think Ninzi's mother died when Ninzi was about 4, so she was raised by her aunt, Phyllis Jordan, a very well-known author and activist in South Africa who's also passed away. But Phyllis instilled principles in their lives, in the lives of the children that she raised. And I think part of Ninzi's struggle was maybe feeling like she never measured up. Um, and I think that gnawed at her just because her life was so fragmented. I mean, when your mother dies at 4 years old and you're taken from the countryside to live in Cape Town, the big city, it's just a lot. It's a lot. And it was just that compounded with other things, compounded with other things. So she struggled a lot. And I think she suffered a lot, even in her young life.
And the other thing, the political unrest during the time she was a teenager, because she ended up uh, being, I won't say a refugee, but
Yeah.
to most, she was actually a refugee from
Yeah.
South Africa.
She did. So with the apartheid regime, her the family who raised her, the Jordans, they left in the early 60s, I believe. And Ninzi stayed behind. She wanted to finish her nursing schooling. But things got so bad, and the South African government started to really tighten down and institute this whole Bantu education into the nursing school systems, and things just really heated up politically. And Ninzi escaped, and she escaped during what something they called the escape route, traveling from Botswana into the Congo, into eventually arriving in Nigeria, which is by the way where she met my birth father. But she was a refugee. Um, the apartheid regime was just, I mean, there had been the Sharpeville massacre, and other of her family members had been persecuted. And so she felt tremendous pressure to leave the country. And so she did as a young woman in her early 20s. Um, and again, her family had already left. So she was doing that with a cousin of hers, and eventually made it to Nigeria where they had an aunt. And Nigeria had been very friendly and very helpful to South Africans who were escaping the apartheid regime. And so that's where she landed. But on the way, she had my sister. So imagine now you're pregnant and you're traveling with a young infant as you're going from country to country, making your way to safety. And so, she really was an amazing person. And I don't know that she fully understood the strength she had, fully appreciated it, I should say.
No, because she could not get over the loss, the loss of the family,
Yeah.
and that really was something that kept her in bondage to a large extent.
Hmm. And you
And
you have to make decisions, and you have to make choices when you're in that situation. And I imagine they're not all pretty choices, but they're survival choices. And I don't think anyone could hold you accountable and blame you. You're trying to save your life. Um, and so it's a hard road.
but she blamed herself more than anyone blaming her, and
Hmm.
that was it, because of the loss, and it was just difficult to break that, break through that barrier,
Yeah, yeah,
but I think in the end she got some peace. I truly believe that,
I do too. I do
because
too. I do. Mary, there was, I think in the end, and I always wondered if there weren't moments where she did sort of come to reality and sort of recognize who I was. But there was an opportunity for us to bring Tuli, my sister, who Lindsay hadn't seen in over 20 years. When Lindsay left Europe, she left Thule behind, and she came to the States. And so shortly before Lindsay passed away, we were able to bring Thule to be reunited with Lindsay. And that was such a joyous occasion. And again, I don't know if she recognized at the time that she had both her daughters, but God knew.
Yes.
God knew. And I just remember when Thule walked into the room, just Lindsay's face just lit up, and it was wonderful. And I was so happy. So I do think she found peace, and she was able to see you again, and she was able to see Sebaletso again. So I think that, in God's own way, I think He just brought it full circle.
Yes, he did. And I'm better for it because it just shows me the power of God. And if there's something that you pray for, he will deliver. And
Well,
because remember, I think I met you on the phone maybe in 2016, and it wasn't
hmm
to 2017 that I could come. And
hmm
she was alive and still alert. And so
yes,
that was a blessing for
yeah,
me
yeah,
because I had long wondered what happened to her and that I just couldn't get an answer. Because
hmm
when people transition from a place and you a gap and you go another way,
right.
new people don't know who you're talking about when you even go to the address. We don't know that person,
That's right.
and that's what I was getting. And then
That's
so
right.
many people that we knew in common transitioned. So
Yes.
therefore, we we weren't able to use that old networking system to find
hmm
out where someone
Yeah.
was.
But I
But
do not
fortunate,
believe. Go ahead.
See, Bledsoe and I have maintained contact for over 55 years. And so that was our connection.
Yes, and you could see these pieces. I mean, if you could sort of take a 50,000 foot view over, an elapsed period of time, you see all these pieces moving together to form, what God had intended in the end. And so I just don't take it for granted or think it coincidence that in that span of time, He brought you, He brought Sibiletso, and He brought Thule to reunite with Ninzi shortly before Ninzi transitioned.
I know because it wasn't a year and a half
It
after I
was
saw
not
it. That wasn't a
Mary.
year. I
Mary, it just,
I just thought about
yeah,
that. Yeah. And that's just amazing. That's when I say you're an amazing woman because you have been able to persevere. You didn't give up
no.
and you continued to you put this piece together, this
I,
puzzle together. And I'm saying you did it beautifully.
Mary,
And
I think I drove my husband crazy, but I was relentless. And the book talks about some of these just amazing coincidence, about how it was that Ninzi even came to Rochester, New York. And, you know, um, she came to attend basically a program at the University of Rochester. And, unbeknownst to me, when it was time to apply to school, ended up attending the University of Rochester. And I had no idea. And I'm 18. And I'm looking at faces, trying to figure out who I am and who I resemble, and trying to just find some breadcrumbs to connect me to my birth family. And lo and behold, I'm walking the same hallways that she had walked 18 years previous, but I never knew it. I never knew until I was 30, 27, going, entering into my 30s, where I began to sort of piece it all together. And when it dawned on me that I had actually attended the University of Rochester, where she had attended 18 years before, that was one of those moments where you're like, this is nobody but God, you
exactly.
know?
Nobody but God. It's
Nobody but God. Nobody but God. And I think he has a sense of humor, and just the way he weaves such a beautiful tapestry.
But the other thing that I saw in that relationship was that the feeling of family amongst South African refugees, and I mean
Mhm.
this happens with other people
Unity.
too,
Yeah.
but there was a close knit group, and so if you had the information, unless you don't want to be found. In certain cases, Ninza didn't want to be located. Okay, so we
Yeah.
have to recognize her privacy in that.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
she did not want to be found because she wanted that peace and quietness. Because
And
I
not to be
remember,
reminded. Yeah.
yes, because I remember once she took a job in Alabama.
Hmm.
And she says, I need this. I need this long time. So you have to respect people for that.
Sure.
So
Sure. Sure. Sure.
yes,
She was trying to heal.
yes,
And I mentioned that in the book. She tried so many ways to heal herself.
yes. And that was one of them when
Hmm.
she, but and there was others, but anyway, we won't go into all of those. I just want you to know that when it comes to reuniting families, there are so many things that causes, and you've mentioned several of them, families to be separated
Hmm.
for a person being given up for adoption. So that's
Hmm.
off the bat, that's a separation. So that if you have other siblings, you may or may not know, and see, God bless you to reconnect
Yes.
with your sibling, which
Yes.
which a lot of people who are given up for adoption, that never happens. And
Yeah.
you didn't do it with DNA analysis. You did it because of connection, and that's the
That's it.
amazing thing about
That
God.
was yes.
See, and that's one thing. And then the other thing is that you were not bitter, because some kids become very bitter when they find out. But your adopted mother told you early on that you were
Yes.
adopted, because
Yes.
I've encountered some situations where children have been adopted and the parents didn't tell them. And when they become a teenager or a young adult, they become angry because they
Sure.
feel like they have been lied to
That's right. And
and
they, yeah. And they,
deceived.
hmm they wonder who they really are. And that's a lot to be confronted with at such a young and delicate age when you're really still trying to come into yourself and your whole foundation gets rocked in that way. That's a lot to expect of any young person to be able to deal with. And quite honestly, even older people who are facing that kind of reunification, because it doesn't always end pretty. Lots of times, the birth parent doesn't want to have anything to do. They've never shared this secret with their new spouse, and you know at the time when I was adopted, the conventional wisdom was to put it behind you and never look back. A lot of that has changed now with open adoptions and all of that, but a lot of people took that to heart, and it's as if it never happened. And then now here you come knocking at the door. Not always are you welcomed. But I was very blessed on both sides of the equation, from Lindsay, my birth mother, as well as my birth father's side, that they were both just open arms and couldn't be more excited than to meet me. And I saw that when I went to South Africa and met my extended family. They rolled out the red carpet. And, because apartheid uniquely divided families, some people fought abroad and some people stayed home and fought, but it wasn't all that uncommon. So, to them, it's not like it just wasn't as startling to them, because a lot of times families are, you know, in Switzerland, in Russia, and other places, and you don't grow up with those people, but they're no less family. And that's the feeling I got when I visited them. And then most recently, my husband and I traveled to Nigeria in March of this year to meet my birth father, and it was the same kind of reception. They just were overjoyed to uh, to be able to meet us, and so I was very fortunate. It doesn't always end that way.
And I said that shows that God has a special hand on you. And I tell you,
Mhm.
it's just amazing. and you're honoring him in terms of the way you have honored your mother and the writing of the book, and I'm sure you will do the same if you get a chance to for your
Yes.
father, and
Yes, I
also
do.
for your adopted mother, because
Hmm.
she was a powerhouse, it seems.
Yes, she was. And I dedicate the book to her because without her, I know that she was an instrument of the Lord. So I could say without the Lord, I don't know where I'd be, but without her, I don't know where I would be. I am eternally grateful for,
And
because she didn't have to do it, Mary.
I have to give some credit to your husband, John, because he has been with you and stuck
He's a
with you through
trooper.
thick and thin on this. So I have to acknowledge him because it takes a unique person, a caring person, to put up with the research. See, I do family
Yeah.
history research, and I know I can empathize with you
Hmm.
what you're going through and how the time it takes to track
It's
things down
true.
and put the puzzle together.
It's true. It's true.
It's amazing.
Hmm. But he's been there every step of the way, and he is my number one encourager in all of this. And just God is just he's a pastor. So when Granny P, Phyllis Jordan, Ninsy's aunt, the woman who raised Ninsy, when she died, John was the person who eulogized her,
Oh
which
wow.
was just was amazing. And then when Uncle Boji died, another person that I write about in the book, he asked that John, before he passed away, after seeing how John preached Granny P's funeral, he asked whenever his time came, would John preach his funeral? And John did. And then when Ninsy died, her funeral was at St. James, and he preached her funeral. So yeah, God is just amazing, and He doesn't stop giving, and just a blessing, just a blessing.
It is a blessing. It is a blessing, as I said, and I congratulate both of you all, and because I've seen you with your girls and sharing knowledge with them, so I'm just elated, and we need more people who have that sense of family,
Hmm.
and you have to make some sacrifices. That's bottom line. You get when it comes to family history and family unity, you have to make some sacrifices.
Yes, you do.
And so, and to me, it is worth it because you help build well rounded individuals.
Hmm.
And like with you, your story is important because so many children, so many adults have felt rejected and sometimes double rejected by both
Hmm.
sides, and you were received. So to me, it's saying it's possible
Hmm.
that you can have reconciliation and happy endings.
Yes,
Everything doesn't have to. But you got to have God first.
yes.
So
Oh,
you have to have God first. And
the
that's the reason I wanted to share your story because
thank
you all
you.
put God first and look what God did.
Look, exactly. And Mary, I want to also just let your audience know that family is also who you make it. And one case in point is how you've come into our lives. And, since Ninsy's passing, you've sort of filled that role of a grandmother to our girls. And so, even so, to the point that when my oldest daughter graduated just a couple of months ago from Spelman, who was there to celebrate with us? But for you, and you kind of were there in Ninsy's stead, and so we've become part of this as you write about and preach about this global family. And Sibiletso is someone I consider a part of our family. And so, um, yeah, I could go on and on. And if I keep going, I'll start to cry and then I'll start to shout.
Well, I'm starting to tear up because it's been, I mean, we have been friends for over 55 years. And so
Mhm.
it is, you become family because you
Mhm.
have that interrelationship and interpersonal relationship for that long a time. It's like family,
Mhm.
you know. And so there's nothing to say that it has to be bloodline to be family.
Right. That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
So, so anyway, I just want to thank you for coming on, and I want to have you back because there's more that we have to talk about when we peel back the onions
Yes.
in terms of why we have so many family problems in our society. It is because we have several things, and I'm just going to summarize these. We're not going
Mhm.
to go into detail. We have unforgiveness,
Mhm.
we have blaming,
Yeah.
we have uh, lies and deceit,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Just hurt. Plain old hurt.
plain old hurt. And so, until we start to, another thing we have is co- communication gaps, big
Yeah.
communication gaps. So
Yes.
until we start to deal with these issues one by one, not all at the same time, but we need to isolate them, deal with them in a workshop format, and encourage families to take control
Yeah.
because that's
Talk.
what you actually did.
Yes, yes, and confront the one thing that, I mean, those things that keep you silent, and those, that's bondage. You need to confront. If there's an issue, let's sit down and let's talk about it, and let's move past this. It's is so important. And so many times we let hurt just fester, and it turns into rot, and it, turns into hate, and it turns into rot, and it eventually kills relationships. You, as they said, you gotta nip it in the bud. You gotta be strong enough to confront the hurt so that you can heal.
Definitely. And I want to commend you because it seems that you have been able to blend your career and use your skills from, I was listening to you talk, so you're using your skills from a lawyer
Hmm.
to help in dealing with situations. You're
Yeah.
using your skill as a mother, as a minister's wife, as a minister yourself,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
are looking at this whole picture on the family. And it's going to take all of us working to change the trajectory that the family has gone on in, and not only
Yes.
in this country, but in the other countries as well.
Yep. Yep.
So, and again, I
It's a
say
tall
thank you.
order.
It's
It's
a
a
tall
tall
order,
order, but
but
all things are possible.
all things are possible. You just proved that. I mean, you proved that with Ninja's Secret.
That's right.
You have proven that. Now, just look at this, and I'm just going to give a recap. You were born in upstate New York.
Hmm.
You were given up for adoption.
Hmm.
You were able to uh, get several degrees, married, have children,
Hmm.
meet your biological mother, meet your biological father,
Hmm.
travel how many miles to South Africa to meet the family there, travel I don't know how many miles to Nigeria, meet the family there. We talking about, and then your sister who's living in Europe, being able to connect with her. You talking about global.
Yeah.
You talking about global. So I'm gonna
Yeah.
have you on my TV show, Our Global Family, because that's what you have represented with your life as related in Ninja Secret. And so I want to commend you and extend an invitation to you to join me as a guest on Our Global Family in the near future so that we can go into a little more detail about the family side, because there is some family history in Ninja's Secret that I was impressed with because I didn't know that piece. So that was some knowledge that I gained, and I thank you for that.
Mm. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. And I would love, love, love to participate.
Yes. And now I'm going to also have to not uh, neglect John. I mean,
Yes.
Minister Walker. I'm going to have to do something to invite him because he is a key part of keeping the family together. So
Oh,
we'll do
yeah.
something. We'll come up with something that we can involve him. So I don't
Okay.
want him to feel neglected, that I know he's been there by your side, and I thank him for taking care of my niece and
So
my
lovely
grand
to.
nieces and nieces.
I'm married. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And you have a nice evening. And God
I
bless
will.
you and your family. Okay.
God bless you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And you have a nice evening.
Bye bye now.
I hope you all have enjoyed this interview with Margaret Williams Walker, Esquire. She can be reached. I was intending to put her information. I think I'll put it on the screen so that you can have this. So y'all bear with this young senior citizen who is learning technology and enjoying it, but has to um, just bear with me. I will pull it up in just a moment. I did post it. Banner. You got a banner that's got to come up with. So you know how to reach her, or you will know how to. Uh, well, I may have to just read it out loud because I don't see it. I thought I had saved it to post it on the screen, but she can. Nancy, would you read that and let? I'm not Nancy. I'm sorry. Forgive me. Margaret, would you share that information
Sure,
with
sure,
my audience, please?
sure. You can reach me at info at ninzysecret.com. Info at ninzysecret.com. The website is Ninzi, Ninzi, secret. There it is. SECRET.com. And you can purchase Ninzi's Secret on Amazon and Barnes and Noble websites. Thank you, Aunt Mary.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I was a little slow in locating it, but I'm getting there.
You got
You
it.
see, I need an assistant, so I had to train one of the girls to could be my
Yes,
virtual
we'd be
assistant.
happy to.
So, all right. Well, thanks again, audience, and we will be back next week with another episode of Reuniting Families and Restoring Family Values. One of the things that is so very important in these difficult times is unity. And so family unity is where we need to begin. Mama used to teach us that charity began at home. And so with that, let's start with our own family, reuniting them, resolving any unresolved issues, and just loving on family. You'll be amazed at the treasures that you will find inside of a family. Margaret was able to uncover a lot of treasures when she went to South Africa in her own family and in her family lineage. And I'm sure she did the same when she went to Nigeria. We just haven't heard about that piece yet, but we look forward to that in the future. So, with that, we're going to say uh, good evening, good night, wherever you are. And thank you all for joining us here at Women in Ministry TV.
Thank you.